Hey there, beautiful people. Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome to the queerest corner of the internet where we break down identities, challenge norms, and proudly speak our truths. I'm your name, and today, we're diving deep into a question that's been popping up a lot lately. Why is Gen Z queerer than ever, and proudly so? Now, unless you've been completely offline, which, let's be honest, is impossible for Gen Z, you've probably noticed a major shift in the way young people are identifying, loving, expressing, and living their authentic selves. From TikTok to pride rallies, classrooms to fashion runways, Gen Z isn't just challenging the binary, we're breaking it wide open. But this isn't just about more rainbows or pronouns in bios. This is about a revolution. A cultural, emotional, and deeply personal movement that's redefining what it means to be human in 2025. Gen Z is the queerest generation in history, and that's not just a bold statement. It's backed by data. In fact, studies show that more than 1 in 5 Gen Z adults openly identify as LGBTQ+. That's over 20%, and rising. So, what's going on? Why are so many young people stepping into their truth with so much more confidence, visibility, and pride than ever before? Is it because the world is finally becoming more accepting? Is it the power of the internet, queer creators, and representation? Or have the older generations just been way too repressed for way too long? Spoiler alert, it's a mix of all of the above, and so much more. In this video, we'll explore the social and cultural shifts that have made queerness more visible, the role of TikTok, fandoms, and Gen Z humor in shaping identity, why Gen Z doesn't just come out, we show up, and how this generation is redefining queerness beyond labels. So grab a drink, snuggle into your safe space, and stick around. Because we're about to unpack the rainbow suitcase and get real about what it means to be queer and Gen Z in today's world. And hey, if you're part of the LGBTQ+ fam, drop your flags in the comments. And if you're still figuring things out, that's okay. You're valid, and this space is for you, too. Alright, let's get into it. Increased visibility and representation. How media has empowered Gen Z's queer identity. In recent years, the world has witnessed a cultural shift in how LGBTQ+ identities are portrayed and perceived, and at the forefront of this transformation is Generation Z, born into a digital age teeming with representation. Gen Z has experienced an unprecedented level of visibility of queer identities across media platforms. Unlike previous generations, they haven't had to search through subtext or coded language to see themselves reflected in television, film, music, and social media. From openly gay characters in Netflix dramas to non-binary influencers on TikTok, this visibility has done more than just entertain, it has shaped how Gen Z understands identity, belonging, and self-expression. For many queer Gen Z individuals, visibility has meant validation. Shows like Heartstopper, Sex Education, and Euphoria don't merely feature LGBTQ+ characters. They explore their experiences with depth, nuance, and empathy. These stories help normalize what was once hidden or taboo, showing that queerness is not just a subplot or stereotype but a lived experience that deserves space and respect. When a young person sees a trans teen navigating high school or a lesbian couple in love without the story revolving around trauma, it sends a powerful message: your existence is normal, your identity is valid, and you are not alone. This increased representation isn't limited to fictional media. Social media platforms like TikTok and YouTube have democratized storytelling, allowing queer creators to speak directly to their audiences. Whether it's a coming-out story, a makeup tutorial by a non-binary artist, or discussions on gender identity, these platforms offer a sense of community and realness that traditional media sometimes lacks. Queer creators don't have to wait for Hollywood to greenlight their stories. They're telling them every day, in their own voices, and reaching millions of people instantly. Moreover, visibility has redefined what queerness looks like. Gen Z's access to diverse content means they're exposed to a wide spectrum of identities and expressions, challenging the limited and often whitewashed images of LGBTQ+ people that dominated past media. Today, queer representation is more inclusive of race, body type, disability, and socio-economic background, offering more realistic and empowering reflections of queer life. This inclusivity encourages young people to explore their own identities without feeling the pressure to fit into a narrow mold. However, this cultural progress is not without backlash. Increased visibility has also sparked debates, censorship, and political pushback. But Gen Z, known for their activism and online mobilization, often meets such resistance with boldness. Empowered by the media they consume, many queer Gen Z individuals are not only more open about who they are but also more willing to advocate for acceptance and equality everywhere. A broader understanding of gender and sexuality, how Gen Z is redefining identity. In today's evolving social landscape, one of the most striking cultural shifts is Gen Z's revolutionary approach to gender and sexuality. Unlike previous generations that often viewed these aspects of identity in rigid, binary terms, Gen Z understands them as fluid spectrums. This generation has grown up in a world saturated with digital platforms, diverse narratives, and global perspectives, which has broadened their understanding of human identity in remarkable ways. For Gen Z, gender is no longer seen as a simple male or female checkbox. Instead, it's a wide and nuanced spectrum, encompassing identities like non-binary, agender, gender fluid, and genderqueer. This shift is not about confusion or rebellion, as some critics claim, it's about authenticity. Gen Z recognizes that identity is deeply personal and can't always be neatly labeled. They believe that gender is not necessarily determined at birth but is something people can explore and define for themselves over time. Sexuality, too, is understood in far more inclusive and dynamic ways. Terms like pansexual, demisexual, and queer have entered the mainstream vocabulary among Gen Z, and many young people are unafraid to question traditional labels. Unlike older generations who often felt pressure to choose between gay or straight, Gen Z embraces the idea that attraction can be fluid, evolving across different people and experiences. This flexibility has allowed for greater self-expression and mental freedom, reducing the stigma that once silenced so many. Social media and digital spaces have played a huge role in this transformation. Platforms like TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram have given rise to creators and influencers who speak openly about their experiences as LGBTQ+ individuals. These stories have humanized and normalized diverse identities, offering visibility and support to those still exploring their own. Gen Z doesn't have to rely on outdated textbooks or limited role models. They have access to real, relatable people living authentic lives. Furthermore, this broader understanding comes with a sense of community and solidarity. Gen Z tends to be more vocal about social justice, equality, and mental health. Their advocacy for inclusive language, pronoun respect, and safe spaces has created an environment where more people feel seen and valued. Schools, workplaces, and even corporations are adapting to this cultural shift by updating policies and promoting inclusivity. Of course, challenges still exist. Gen Z faces backlash from conservative voices, and not everyone has access to supportive environments. But despite this, their courage in challenging the status quo has set a new precedent. They are not simply rewriting the rules. They're creating a world where rules are less important than respect.
Digital communities and safe spaces, empowering Gen Z through online connection. In an increasingly connected world, digital communities have become lifelines for Gen Z, especially for those navigating gender and sexual identities. Unlike previous generations, Gen Z has grown up with the internet not just as a tool, but as a companion, one that listens, validates, and sometimes even saves lives. Online platforms have become vital safe spaces for self-expression, coming out, and seeking support. These digital arenas are more than just places to scroll or post, they are sanctuaries where queer individuals, especially youth, find their voice. For many queer Gen Z individuals, growing up in traditional or conservative environments can mean hiding parts of themselves to survive. The internet, however, offers a different reality. Platforms like Reddit, Tumblr, TikTok, and Discord serve as virtual hideaways where users can talk openly about their experiences, ask questions without fear, and find others who understand their journey. A young person struggling with their gender identity in a small town can connect with someone across the globe going through the same thing. This level of access to empathy and shared experience has been transformative. One powerful example of this is queer TikTok, which has evolved into a vibrant, inclusive space where people explore identity through storytelling, humor, and education. The platform's short-form videos allow creators to make complex topics digestible and relatable. From coming-out stories and mental health discussions to guides on using correct pronouns and understanding gender fluidity, queer TikTok is both a support group and a celebration. The comment sections often become communities themselves, filled with encouragement, shared experiences, and emotional support. Niche subreddits like r/LGBT or r/asktransgender offer another kind of digital refuge. These forums allow for anonymity and honesty, where users can seek advice about relationships, medical transitions, or navigating family rejection. What makes these spaces especially valuable is the non-judgmental culture, a rare luxury in real life. Many young people find that the support they receive from strangers online feels more authentic than the silence they endure at home or school. What defines these digital safe spaces is not just the content, but the community standards. Moderators often enforce rules against hate speech, bullying, or invalidation. This creates a protective bubble where being queer is not only accepted but celebrated. As a result, users build confidence and resilience, learning to embrace their truth before they're even ready to come out offline. However, these communities are not without risks. Online harassment, misinformation, and performative activism can muddy the waters. But for many, the benefits outweigh the risks. Challenging norms and labels, how Gen Z is redefining identity. Generation Z is rewriting the rules of identity, pushing boundaries in ways that previous generations hesitated to explore. Born between the late 1990s and early 2010s, Gen Z grew up in a digital world saturated with diversity, activism, and open dialogue. Unlike generations before them, Gen Z is less interested in conforming to traditional societal expectations, particularly when it comes to gender roles, sexuality, and identity. They're not just embracing change, they're demanding it. One of the most noticeable shifts is their resistance to heteronormativity, the assumption that heterosexuality is the default or normal orientation. Instead, Gen Z is embracing a broad spectrum of sexual identities. Labels such as bisexual, pansexual, asexual, queer, or simply fluid have become more widely accepted and used. Even more revolutionary is the rise of a label-free mindset. Many Gen Z individuals prefer not to define themselves at all, opting for freedom over fixed categories. For them, identity is not a box to check, it's a living, evolving experience. This generation is also challenging the traditional binary view of gender. Male or female are no longer the only recognized identities. Non-binary, gender fluid, agender, and other expressions are becoming part of everyday conversation, especially online where safe spaces and communities flourish. Platforms like TikTok, Reddit, and Instagram have become arenas for self-expression, allowing people to explore and share their identities without fear of judgment. Visibility has increased, not just in niche communities, but in pop culture, fashion, and politics, where Gen Z voices are increasingly influential. What makes Gen Z's approach particularly powerful is their focus on authenticity. Instead of following a societal script, they value personal truth. For many, this means rejecting labels altogether and forming relationships and self-concepts based on emotional connection, shared values, and mutual respect. They are less concerned with what people should be and more focused on who people truly are. This shift is leading to deeper, more inclusive conversations about identity, belonging, and what it means to live freely. Of course, this shift hasn't come without resistance. Traditional institutions, such as schools, workplaces, and families, sometimes struggle to adapt to these evolving norms. But Gen Z is undeterred. Their courage to challenge outdated beliefs is inspiring movements in education, media representation, mental health awareness, and beyond. Ultimately, Gen Z's refusal to be boxed in is a radical act of self-love and collective growth. By dismantling rigid norms and embracing a more fluid understanding of identity, they are not only creating space for themselves. They are paving the way for future generations to exist more fully and authentically. Pride as protest and celebration, how Gen Z is redefining queer identity. For Gen Z, Pride isn't just a rainbow parade, it's a statement. It's glitter and picket signs, music and megaphones. This generation, raised on the internet and growing up in a time of political and social upheaval, blends pride with activism in a way that makes it both a celebration of identity and a protest against injustice. To them, queerness is not only something to be proud of, it's something worth fighting for. Unlike previous generations that often had to choose between joyful self-expression or urgent political protest, Gen Z embraces both. Their pride is colorful and vibrant, but it's also deeply rooted in awareness. They dance in the streets and demand justice in the same breath. This duality reflects how Gen Z views identity, not as something to hide or just survive with, but as something that deserves visibility, safety, and full acceptance in every part of life. One of the most powerful ways Gen Z expresses this is through their focus on trans rights. While Pride Month has traditionally centered around broader LGBTQ+ visibility, Gen Z refuses to let trans voices be sidelined. They challenge laws and language that erase trans people and highlight issues like healthcare access, representation, and legal protections. For Gen Z, a Pride celebration that doesn't center trans rights isn't truly inclusive. Another critical area where Gen Z shines is their openness about queer mental health. They reject the idea that being queer means constantly having to be strong or silent. Instead, they talk honestly about anxiety, depression, trauma, and the unique mental health challenges faced by queer youth. Social media becomes both a tool of expression and a support network, allowing queer individuals to share their stories and find community, even when they're physically isolated. Intersectionality is another cornerstone of Gen Z's pride. They understand that being queer doesn't exist in a vacuum. Race, class, disability, religion, and nationality all affect how someone experiences their identity. Gen Z's Pride marches don't just feature rainbow flags, they include Black Lives Matter signs, calls for immigrant rights, and support for disabled queer voices. They see these struggles as connected, not separate. As a result, their activism is more inclusive, more radical, and more reflective of the real world. Social media plays a huge role in how Gen Z navigates this balance of protest and celebration. Platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and X, formerly Twitter, amplify marginalized voices and give visibility to grassroots movements. A viral video or hashtag can spark real-world change, and young queer activists are using these tools to educate, organize, and empower.
And there you have it, why Gen Z is queerer than ever, and proud of it. We've explored the history, the culture, the internet chaos, the labels, the freedom, and the fire that drives this generation to live more openly, authentically, and unapologetically queer. But beyond the statistics and social movements, there's a deeper truth here. Gen Z is choosing love over fear, freedom over silence, fluidity over boxes, and pride over shame. We're rejecting the idea that identity has to be rigid or hidden or explained to fit in. We're saying, this is who I am. Take it or leave it. And that kind of courage, that kind of visibility, it's revolutionary. But let's not forget, not everyone has it easy. Queer youth still face bullying, rejection, mental health struggles, and even violence. Pride is powerful, but it's also protest. So when we show up as ourselves, we're also showing up for those who can't, yet. And that's what makes Gen Z different. We're loud, we're online, we're funny as hell, but we're also fierce, informed, and unafraid to call out injustice. So if you're watching this right now, and you're wondering where you fit in, hear this loud and clear. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need a label to belong. Your queerness is valid, even if it changes over time. And this space? It's yours, too. Before we wrap up, I want to thank you for being part of this community. Whether you're out, questioning, an ally, or just here to learn, every view, like, comment, and share helps create a safer, louder, prouder internet. So do me a favor. Like this video if it resonated with you. Drop your thoughts or your story in the comments, I read every single one. Share this with a friend who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more queer content, deep dives, and Gen Z storytelling that actually gets it. Because here, we keep it real, we keep it kind, and we keep it proud. Until next time, stay bold, stay fluid, stay you. Peace, pride, and power.